Father, we just want to come before you today and give thanks. Give thanks for all your many blessings, Lord. You've blessed us abundantly, overflowing, Lord God. Provided for all of our needs above and beyond. We are the envy of kings here in this country, Lord God, and we thank you for that, Lord. But we stand in danger of losing these blessings and losing your favor upon us, Lord God. Because we've esteemed the blessings better and higher than the blesser, and you are the blesser, Lord. And we've forgotten that as a nation where our liberty and our freedom comes from, Lord God. But there's good news that if we turn again to the Lord, if we seek and try our ways and turn again to the Lord, that we will find that favor again, Lord God. You say that those that seek you will find you when we search for you with all our hearts. And you are near to them, Lord, that draw near unto you, Lord. So as a nation, Lord, return us again to our foundations, to our one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Father, we just call upon your name. You say that if your people will humble themselves and pray and seek your face, and turn from their wicked ways, that you will hear from heaven and forgive us our sins and heal our land. So, Father, as people that know you and call upon your name, Lord, we do that. We call upon your name, we humble ourselves, and we repent before you and ask that you would turn again this nation back to you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And Nate LaValle will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, but I never
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get this thing going. I will have reports from all of our officers, so I'm not going to intrude on our fundraising chair, who really did an amazing job at our big sold-out event last weekend. So if you didn't get this year, be watching for it next year so you can get your tickets early. We had some sad people that couldn't get tickets at the last minute. So let's have Jan Ingen. She'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes that are on your table from our last meeting. There's a lot of information in there, and I hope you've taken time to kind of look through it. So
I'm going to make the motion. Lynn Halford.
Thank you. Lynn Halford will make the motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Lynn McCabe will second. Okay. We'll have our membership report next with Sherry Kaidan, VP of Membership.
Hi, I'm Sherry, and we have 206 members at this time, and look forward to having more. And coming up with the new year, you'll be receiving an email about renewing membership. So just keep your eye out for that, and we want to keep every one of you, even after the elections, so that we can all stay informed and be involved with whatever is coming up in the legislative session and other things in Alaska. So thank you, and thank each one of you for being here today. We really appreciate your support.
Okay, and Caitlin Espada, our VP of Fundraising, she deserves a really big hand this morning. She did a great job. She not only organized our event, but she also went out and received many donations for our silent auction and live auction items. So thank you, Caitlin. Do you have something to report today?
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone that helped out. We had lots of donations, cakes, we sold more tickets we sold all of them plus, number-wise. And it was just a really good event, and I'm excited for next year, and we're going to start planning it soon.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and a treasurer report from Natalie Martin, who has a really big job in our club.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First,
Thank you, Natalie. That's awesome. And as you know, all of the funds that we raise, we try to get out to conservative candidates to support these really expensive campaigns. And they're getting more and more expensive as we have, you know, millions of dollars poured into our state from outside money. So today, Lynn McCabe, our Vice President of Programs, is going to introduce our guest speaker. We'll just get started right away.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to have over 200 people in our membership. That's a high number for us. So our speaker today, many of you already know, some of you don't, but one thing I found out today is he was born the same year I graduated from high school. So I feel very old. 1977, and he grew up in Valdez. He's a Navy veteran, a Christian, husband, father, self-proclaimed amateur apologist, and lover of good communication, according to the website of the Alaska Watchman, which he maintains, the website, and he's also responsible for operations and advertising, and he's the president of Crystal Clear Creative, and he stepped up recently as one of the faces of David, who is fighting the Goliath of outside dark money in the Constitutional Convention vote that we will be engaged in on November the 8th. He spends countless hours putting together advertising and building the message, and he probably has his fingers in the website too, I'm assuming, which works very well. I just used it. So don't forget to donate, they need help. And with no further ado, let's welcome Jake Libby.
Thank you so much, Lynn. For those of you who don't know me, I'm not here in the capacity of the publisher of the Alaska Watchman today. I'm also not here in the capacity of C3, which is my marketing company. I'm here as a fellow citizen who has watched for the last 6 years, really it's been 6 years, that the state has gone off a cliff with respect to corruption and gridlock down in Juneau. I swear COVID was like gas on the accelerator for the dysfunction down in Juneau. And I think, and we're about to launch a radio ad for the Convention Yes campaign, I think for the first time, Alaskans just might be fed up enough with their local government to say, yeah, you know what, it's time to fix some things. So I come to you in the capacity of just a fellow citizen. Obviously I'm conservative and the publisher of the Alaska Watchman. But I had the pleasure of debating Kathy Giesel at the Baxter Community Council, Kathy Giesel, at the Baxter Community Council's, Baxter Community Council at Baxter Elementary in Anchorage about a month ago, and it was an incredibly truncated potential speech, and the innocuous ring. Time's up, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm done. Anyway, they gave us 5 minutes to present the one side, 5 minutes for the other, and then there was a 2-minute rebuttal followed by a 2-minute rebuttal, and that was it. And with Q&A that all went to people asking very hard questions of Ms. Giesel. This had nothing to do with the event, merely her wild stance change on everything from abortion to the PFD to everything else. It's the reason why she's unrecognizable to her constituents, but they've redistricted, and so now she actually stands a chance in her current race. Anyway, so to say that, I went in with a 5-minute speech prepared that I felt like addressed, and this will not be 5 minutes, it'll be longer than that, but I felt like addressed the root cause of why you would be afraid of a convention and why that's ridiculous, and the way that they're presenting it. But in you live and learn, you get better at things like this the more you do them. I was struck with apoplexy for about the first 30 seconds of my rebuttal because so much BS came out of her mouth in 5 minutes that I didn't know. Should I stick with plan A, or should I address the complete garbage that she just presented to everyone here who didn't know any better? I mean, in large part, they didn't know any better. How many people here have asked somebody, where do you stand on a constitutional convention? I asked everybody, and we'll just wait before you raise your hand, and had somebody respond, what's a constitutional convention? Right? Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest plagues on our society is an ignorant electorate. I mean, Plato famously said, the consequence of indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And we as a nation are just way too comfortable watching our Netflix and doing our thing while the machinations of government become more and more corrupt. So anyway, so the talk that I am going to give you today is based on rebutting the things that Kathy proposed in the beginning of her speech, a very short speech, but it speaks to the meat of things, and it was also the presentation that Matt Shekaro gave at the, has anybody here seen the UAA debate between Matt Shekaro and Bob Byrd and Lauren Lehman? Okay, well, so Matt Shekaro and Angie Steffel is here. She's CABE's chief of staff. He trotted out Mike Shower, who many of you know and love. Mike Shower used him wildly out of context in opposition to a ConCon, and Mike was fit to be tied for being misquoted because the only reason he had faith that when he made those statements was before the last legislative session, and he had a glimmer of faith that the legislature could still get something done, and after it went down in flames in Juneau, in gridlock and total corruption, Louis Stutes held the vote for 4.5 days while special interests went from room to room and finally got enough people bought or promised to be no votes. And just when witnessing the level of corruption was enough to turn Shower from a no to a yes must be a yes. So the no side has 3 planks in their argument. The first plank is that it is unnecessary. And then they'll trot out a copy of Alaska's Constitution, which if you get a pocket Constitution, it will have in it all of the changes of the Constitution since statehood. And there were 42 amendments proposed, and 28 of them have passed since then. And then they'll leave it at that, as if we're just trucking along. Well, many of you, and there are some older people in this room, probably remember that after statehood, almost every election cycle, there was something on there where people had discovered, hey, this is a flaw. We should fix this. We should fix this. And then it would either get voted on, and like I said, 28 times it has passed, and 14 times it went down in flames. But the point is you could get things on the ballot because the legislature was functioning as a legislature ought. It was not, it hadn't yet descended into the scum of the swamp that it now is now. And I don't mean necessarily the legislators themselves. I mean the entire process down in Juneau. Very little gets done in the chambers. It gets, and I've had multiple people describe this process to me. They leave the chambers and they go, and all the Democrats go to one bar and get hammered, and all the Republicans tend to go to another bar and they drink, and that's where the real business gets done and all the favors get pulled. It is a swamp down there. And that's the reason why the last amendment to actually get passed was in 2004, and it was on ballot initiatives. Just for a moment, think back on the state of this nation and the state of Alaska in 2004. 2004, 3 years after 9/11. How far have we come since 2004? I mean, in 2004, cell phones weren't even really a thing, not the way that we think of them today. And now look at this. Now look at the state of affairs between election integrity. I mean, you name it. There's the planks of things that I personally would love to see changed are a mile long. But a notion that we haven't been able to successfully get a constitutional amendment onto the ballot for vote and approval since 2004 is, I consider, to be very telling. Now, one of the things that the no crowd likes to say is that our Constitution isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn good. It's the best Constitution in the nation. They say words like this. And what I find interesting is the juxtaposition that the framers were so wise in the drafting of the Constitution, and yet the framers intentionally put a constitutional convention question call on the ballot every 10 years because they knew that there might come a time when the state of Alaska would become so gridlocked, favors promised, and corrupt that the people would need to step around the legislature and the judiciary to get things done. And that is exactly what a constitutional convention is. It is a way to step around the legislature and judiciary and get amendments onto the ballot for we the people to vote on. Now that's something they don't say. They don't tell you that in their absolutely staggering amount of money that they're spending in the state of Alaska, they don't tell you that anything that comes out of a convention has to be ratified. They present it as though the doors are going to swing open and a bunch of people are going to go to a back room somewhere and they're going to rewrite the Constitution, and ta-da! Alaska is stuck with the result. That's exactly how they present it. And people who don't know any better go, yeah, that's a terrible idea. I don't want a bunch of people being able to change the Constitution willy-nilly. There are a lot of things about Alaska I like. And then they trot out all of the boogeymen. Gun rights, access to public lands, access to fishing. They say all of the things that will scare reasonable conservatives who don't understand that you will never get gun rights or gun restrictions past a popular vote in the state. You will never get that done. Not a chance. Bring it on. I'd love to see that vote. I mean, you were talking about a split. Wow. Anyway, the same thing for public lands. Whether or not you're an avid outdoorsman or a hunter, you know there is no way you're going to say, yeah, you know, well, we don't think that the people of Alaska should be able to get to XYZ, or they should be able to, you know, trot up into national parks except for on weekends or something. Who knows? It's such a boogeyman that all of a sudden access to public lands would pass a popular vote. But they don't say pass a popular vote. They just say it's on the table. And then they trot out the next line, which is from the Constitution that says a constitutional convention shall have plenary power. Oh, plenary. Meaning anything. They could change anything. Well, the reason they included that word is because when the Constitution was originally ratified after our first convention, they thought, well, it was proposed that maybe at a constitutional convention only certain laws should be able to be edited by a constitution, and then we'll make like fiscal laws can have to be done by the legislature. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to limit it. And so they put the word plenary power in there. But again, a convention has no actual power. All it is a think tank. It's a group of concerned citizens, and currently, you could be a legislator and be a delegate. I think that should be, if anything should start a freaking war in this state, it should be the idea that the foxes down in Juneau are going to remake the henhouse. That is absurd. If a legislator tries to vote that they should be a delegate, that ought to be the very end of their political career. There could be nothing more blatantly a conflict of interest than watching the people who have presided over our current situation say, oh yeah, we're going to fix it. I'll fix it. I'll fix it. I'll fix it. Yeah, right. Okay, so they say it's unnecessary. That's the first blank. And I think not only is it necessary, but it is time. And virtually everybody that I talk to in person and explain what a convention actually is and does agrees. I have not had one person say, yeah, no, still haven't convinced me. I'm a no. It has not happened when I'm having just a regular conversation with somebody. The second thing, the second blank, is that they say it's expensive. And man, I find this to be funny. So the legislative estimates, which of course they round up on everything to try and make it a boogeyman, legislative estimates are that it would be $17 million, all in, to host a convention. Only the state of Alaska could blow $17 million on the convention. Only the state of Alaska. That's $261,000 per delegate. Just imagine that. So let's say we paid somebody $1,000 a day per diem. Okay, so if it was 2 months, that'd be 60 grand. You get it, which you're not going to get $1,000 per day. You could pay somebody to have a virtual assistant, an actual assistant, a chief of staff, and a legal advisor, and you still couldn't burn through $261,000 if you gave everybody 10 grand a day for the event, for the actual, the place where they would rent to actually hold it. I mean, it is ridiculous. But let's give them $17 million. The state of Alaska, and if you don't know this, it'll make you a little nauseous. It makes me nauseous. If you take the unrestricted general fund, which is about $5 billion a year, and then you take federal money and the dedicated expenses, our state budget is over $10 billion a year. Now, we live in an age where people throw around words that rhyme with billion, like they're willy-nilly. You may not know it, but excuse me. So we've given close to $200 billion to the war effort in Ukraine as a nation. Qatar, you may be familiar with the country, Qatar is hosting the World Cup. Any idea how much money they're spending on infrastructure and marketing for the World Cup? Take a wild guess. Throw out a number.
100 billion.
$200 billion they're spending to host the World Cup. Man, you talk about loyalty to soccer. We spend $10 billion for our very small population spread over a vast area of land. Our budget is over $10 billion. So one exercise that I like to do to bring things home for the average person like me who doesn't make those kinds of that kind of money is to start dropping zeros until things make sense. So if we just drop 5 zeros off of the budget and off of their ridiculous estimate of what it would cost to hold the convention, we get $100,000 and 170. So imagine, you've been working in your job, and you're Methuselah, and you're going to live forever. So you've been working in your job to the point where you now make $100,000 a year, and for 70 years, you have not swept the floors, you have not repainted the house, you haven't done anything to keep your house in order. And you're going to tell me that $170 out of $100,000 a year is somehow an untenable expense. Raise your hand in this room if you have spent more than $170 on dinner in the last 6 months. I don't believe that. I don't believe there's only 5 people. I don't believe it. So, I mean, good Lord, it's going to cost you $90 for 4 ribeyes at Costco, and that's Costco.
Oh,
Anyway.
I thought you meant eating out. Okay.
Oh, I did. I'm just saying, the point is that $170 out of $100,000 is a very manageable number to, for the first time in 70 years, actually go around our legislature and get things on the ballot for we the people to vote upon. I consider its expensive plank to be the most laughable of them all. Truly, it's just ridiculous. So to put that into context, $10 billion a year is $30 billion a day. Or said another way, it's 0.17%, not 1.7%, 0.17% of our state budget. 0.17. Oh, perish the thought we couldn't possibly afford to fix Alaska's problems, or at least propose them to the people to fix. Oh, thank you. Lynn is my water fairy. It just appeared. I didn't even see it happen. So the last blank is that they say it's risky, and I find this to be. I find their entire position to be untenable. But the risky is equally to me as my vocabulary fails me. As ridiculous, as unnecessary, or as a boogeyman or a paper tiger. Here's the truth of the matter. There is no risk in a convention unless you're terrified that people will fix something. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're afraid any change in the status quo is going to impact you and the levers of power that you believe you currently have access to, or the income you currently receive, likely from the state of Alaska, then be afraid. Because nothing radical that comes out of a constitutional convention, which I don't even think anything radical would come out of a convention, but even if there was, even say it was just radical would make national news. Writing the word abortion on your cell phone is an automatic jail sentence, or something just insane. You think you're going to get that past the people of Alaska in a popular vote? Of course you are not. You are not. But this is what they don't want to admit. The odds are there are a bunch of very reasonable things that you will be able to get past the people of Alaska. I'll give you my 5 because I think they're so reasonable that they're almost assured to happen if we can get a convention called. First one, the legislature shall not receive per diem if the session is held more than 50 miles away from Alaska's most populous city at the time. Full stop. How would you like to be able to say, I gotta take a long lunch, I gotta go look this cat in the eye and say, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? No one. I don't know anybody who, as a rule, has the time and money to get on a plane, fly to Juneau, hope they don't get socked in and the flight delayed, get a room, wait for your next day appointment so you can be there on time, meet for a half an hour with XYZ, and then get on a plane and fly. No one has that kind of time, and they want it that way. They want to be sequestered down in Juneau, where the swamp is so deep and so scummy you can't see through it, and all the business gets done in the dark green waters below. That's what they want. That is exactly what they want. So putting our legislature on the road system is something, A, that terrifies them, and B, because they know for sure the people, and they've already done it twice, the people would say, you're damn right, I want to be able to look my legislators in the eye. And Juneau is not the place. It's got to be on the road system. You can have all the fancy buildings, you can have this, you can have all of it. But the legislative session, where ordinary lawmaking happens, that you need to be accessible while that happens. So that's one thing. Another thing that I think is very important is constitutionalizing our PFD. And here's why. It is not because, and this may surprise you, it is not because I personally think that the PFD is the best thing in the world. I'm not actually sure whether I like it or don't like it as a stipend. But I think there are a lot of people, and it was originally formed because the wealth that flowed into the state of Alaska from oil was really only benefiting the people on the road system and on the people who were nearby to where the oil was actually being produced and where the oil was being shipped. And they said, we have to share that. We weren't given all of the options at statehood that Puerto Rico and Guam and American Samoa were given. We were not given our four choices of Commonwealth status and whatnot, which is why Alaska is mostly a national park, in defiance of our U.S. Constitution, I might add. But having said that, we were given those subsurface rights, or excuse me, we were not given those subsurface mineral rights as individuals like you would if you were in North Dakota. You put oil derricks on your 5 acres, and if you struck gold, woohoo! You can't get that in Alaska. And so we share in that benefit. And for 6 years, since the definition of allocation was redefined, and Walker, and with the help of Kathy Giesel, I might add, broke out and said, well, guess who gets to decide allocations? The legislature. But hey, wait, but we've been doing just fine for 20 years. Why are you, no. And now, you get things like what happened this last session when Louise Stutes closed the door. And I guarantee you, nonprofit groups sat in those rooms and said, you know what, you won't have to worry. And I actually know, I won't name names, but I know there's actually a federal investigation going on right now. You don't worry about your re-election campaign. We will take care of all of that, but you have to vote no. You vote no, and I guarantee you have all the money you want for re-election, which is a total federal crime, and it happened. And I bet you it happened to almost every no vote in one form of promise or another. And it is because if they now control that, then they get to control who spends it. And you better believe that money is going to flow to people. It's such a corrupt conflict of interest to say that the legislature is going to find religion and start doing the right thing without the people saying, no. Absolutely not. It's not going to happen. So anyway, so they say it's risky. I genuinely don't believe that you will get anything radical past the people of Alaska. I do not. I was giving you my planks. The constitutionalizing the PFD would take it completely out of the legislative hands. There would be nothing they could do. And I'm fine, as much as I'm fine with the PFD as an income stream for families, because I know a lot of families depend on that money hugely, particularly if they have a bunch of kids. Putting the percent of market value split between government and the individuals, I think is fair, and I think it has worked. And I think that if we were to put that into the Constitution, I think the people of Alaska would say, sounds good, yes, and they don't want that. So that's part of the reason why you're getting so much pushback from the no crowd. They don't want that. The third thing, without question, and if you watch the debate with Bob Bird and Lauren Lehman, Lauren famously said, I think it should be famous, he said, at the time, he was down in Juneau, and it was a Democrat governor and a Democrat Senate. And he said, someday, he was talking to the governor, and he said, I can't remember which governor it was. He said, someday, you may have a Republican governor, and you may even have a Republican Senate, but we'll always have you in the courts. And the reason why, in 1955, they actually hired a team of legal advisors to say, hey, we just want to bounce this past you. Do you think this is good? Well, we modeled our Supreme Court justice selection process after Missouri, who has long since, abandoned it for it being corrupt. But what they said to the convention crowd, their recommendation was, they said, we believe that the convention has gone further than is necessary or safe in placing one of the equal branches of government out of the hands of democratic controls and into the hands of a private professional group. Full stop. And of course, as you obviously know, their recommendations were ignored. And at the time, people said, if it turns out crappy, we'll fix it at a convention in 10 years. And then you had to fast forward 70 years, and it's very, very difficult to get this done. So that's the third thing. Reforming the way that we select Supreme Court justices. And I'm not personally decided on whether that should be by popular vote and campaigning, or it should just be a blanket appointment by the governor that gets ratified by the legislature. And honestly, I'd be fine with either, as long as there was some accountability. And currently, there is none. Fourth thing. I got 5 good ones. The legislative session being accessible, the permanent fund being constitutionalized, the selection of our Supreme Court justices, election reform, specifically election reform. Our voter rolls have grown to 107%, and now they're pushing so hard for universal mail-in balloting. Which, has anybody here seen 2,000 Mules? Have you seen 2,000 Mules? I love that so many people have seen that. The way that they dismiss that is, it boggles the mind that you can look at that data. Actually, the CEO of the company that they bought the data from is on record against the critics of the film saying, it's ridiculous. You think that data isn't accurate? I can tell which side of your dining room table you are sitting on with my location data. That is how accurate we know where you're at. Anyway, so this idea of ballot harvesting, mail-in ballot, universal mail-in balloting, just blanket sweeping, 100,000 ballots out to every address of everybody who's ever lived anywhere in the state of Alaska, and then sitting back, and then I was struck. Have you seen the movie Idiocracy? Have you heard of it, perhaps? I felt like I was in some weird, out-of-context clip that didn't make the film when they were doing the calculations. And somebody took their cell phone and they held it up to the computer monitor and they said, ready, we're gonna hit the tabulate button. Click, Mary Beltola wins! That is what our election systems have come down to, is this wild, blind faith that all of the actors and all of the ballots that have gone out are all accurately counted and accurately attributed. And we've been subjected to, like children watching Saturday morning cartoons, clicking and going, ha-ha, the outcome. I find it to be reprehensible the way our current voting system works and the way that it has been done. And I think that those are things, particularly getting rid of just blanket mail-in balloting and cleaning up our voter rolls. Honestly, I think they should just say, whoop, clean slate, 0 registered voters in the state of Alaska. If you want to vote, you have 9 months till the election to register to vote. And you have to actively want to do it. You have to want to do it. Because we want people who want to do it. And you have to have all of your state residency and blah, blah, blah. Just wipe the slate clean. How hard is it? 5 minutes out of your day to register to vote? You can't do that? It's absurd. Anyway, the last thing, and this should have been one of the first things, is I believe that you could pass a balanced budget amendment out by the people of Alaska. I think if you make us as human beings, it's reasonable, say, hey, I can't spend more than I make. So you put an amendment into the Constitution that says your state budget for this year cannot exceed revenues from the fiscal year prior. Simple. It's so simple. And that kind of thing, the ability to take the credit card away from the teenagers down in Juneau, terrifies them because they have the ability to spend and graft their way into any situation. It's how we get this government bloat. They create an allocation, which creates a constituency, which creates another group of people with their hand out saying, no. You want my vote? Keep giving me that. I want that. You better give that nonprofit this. You better spend that money over here. We need one of these. We need one of those. What about this? It's all a byproduct of this ability to overspend, and those are the 5 things that I think would be reasonable and would pass, and I do think that they would get through and pass the people of Alaska. Now, one of the things that the no crowd is saying is they're just all about abortion. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Personally, I find abortion to be reprehensible. I think the idea that it is about your privacy is it's a paper tiger, really, is what it is. Yeah, Dave Chappelle famously said, "You're either pro-life or you're anti-consequences." That's Dave Chappelle's line, and it's a good line. If you think about it for a minute, it's a good line. Do I think you could get an outright abortion ban out of the convention? Maybe? I don't know. Do I think it would pass the people of Alaska? I do not. I do not think the people of Alaska would say, under no circumstances could this ever happen. I don't think you get that passed, but I think you can get a heartbeat bill passed. They love to trot out supposedly democratic socialist countries like Norway. Almost every country in Europe has far stricter abortion laws than we have in the state of Alaska. Almost all of them. And so, do I think you could get a heartbeat bill passed? I see Shelley Hughes in the back of this room. I think you could. I think you could. All these things terrify the left because they kind of like the way things are. They like the status quo. But so as a convention group, what we have decided to focus on the most, because it has the power to galvanize the people, is the PFD. So our messaging has been about the PFD and will continue to be about the PFD because the bottom line is it is important enough to enough people that it will get somebody off of their butt and to the polls, because our turnout as a state is abysmal. It's ridiculous that 1 in 5 people make the decisions for the rest of us. I am suffocated by how sad it makes me that we don't have more civic engagement as a state, or as a nation for that matter. I mean, when they established voting in Iraq, you had a very good chance of getting sniped on your way to the polls. Literally, people were getting shot, and they had a 50% voter turnout. Are you kidding me? What courage those people had to be like, you know what, I might die today, but by God, I am going. And maybe it was a different God they were praying to, but they had the courage to go to the polls and make their voices heard. And we're just so comfortable watching our Netflix that we don't do it. The last thing that I want to leave you with before I do a little Q&A and I'll answer anybody's questions if I can, is we started this meeting with, I think, a great prayer. A prayer to turn our faces back to God and that He would heal this land. And I will tell you this, the third thing they like to say is that it is risky. I will tell you, God's miracles don't come when times are great and abundant and everything's going well. They come under duress when you turn your face to Him. And the most perfect example of this that I can think of is the destruction of Sennacherib. He was the Assyrian king, and he had ransacked 42 cities all the way around in the kingdom of Judah, all the way around Jerusalem. And in the Bible it says it had Hezekiah caged like a bird. Every city in the area had been crushed, and he had 185,000 troops surrounding Jerusalem, and they came up to the door and they said, "You have seen what we've done to all of these other places. Open up and swear fealty. Pay your tribute," which Hezekiah did to make him go away, but he wouldn't swear off God. He said, "I won't do that." And they were so terrified, the people who weren't Christians in that city fled. Bible in Isaiah, it says they fled. They were like, "I'm out. You guys are going to die here. I'm out." I've watched with them. They don't leave no stone unturned in these other cities. And everyone in that town prayed that night. You may not know this, but one of my side hobbies is poetry recitation. My dad, instead of beating me when I was a kid, he would make me memorize a poem commensurate to the crime, and if I would been really bad, sometimes they were multiple pages. But it was far more effective at teaching me, number one, how to learn things, but number two, I really don't want to do something bad because some of these are pretty obnoxious. But Lord Byron, is one of his poems that I love the most, speaks to the destruction of Sennacherib and God coming through in your time of need. The Assyrian, this is Sennacherib. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the tips of their spears were like stars on the sea when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. And like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. The angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and he breathed in the face of his foes as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill. Their hearts but once heaved, and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, yet through it there rolled not the breath of his cry. And the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and as cold as the spray of the rock-beaten surf. And there lay his rider, distorted and pale, with dew on his brow and rust on his mail. The tents are all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpets unblown. And the widows of Asher are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. For the might of the Gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. Okay, now I'll go.
Questions? We'll see if this other microphone won't work. Does anybody have a question for Jake? I think maybe if you speak real close to it, it might help. You have to go
Well,
real
actually,
close. Real
Two
close.
questions. Okay, one is, on the Alaska Watchman site, when you donate through a group.
Again, I'm not here in the capacity of the publisher of the Alaska
Understand,
Watchman. Okay.
but I have a question on that.
Okay.
Is there a way you can just do like a check or something and mail it?
You can mail to our address. It's in the privacy policy. Our address is on there, just for letter correspondence mail.
Okay, and address, and make the check out to Alaska Watchman,
If you want to support the Alaska Watchman.
if I
yes.
want to support the Alaska Watchman.
Thank you.
The other thing, in terms of election fraud, okay, we voted, yes or no, on Proposition 2 in 2020. Proposition 2 had the same sort of algorithm problems in the voting machines that nationwide Republican candidates, some Republican candidates had, where things were at a point on November 3rd, and then later on, when all these mail-in ballots came in, suddenly Proposition 2 passed.
Huge duffel bags in many cases.
Yes, there is that, and dead people arose from the dead and so forth, and became alive again and voted. They may have been Republican voters, but suddenly when they were alive again, they turned Democrat. Yes, precisely. My question is, Proposition 2, because of our Supreme Court system and our weak-kneed election division was allowed to, and the legislature allowing it, was allowed to go through as a package deal with 3 parts to it. One being dark money, one being ranked choice voting or gangbang primaries, and one being, I'm sorry, I'm 79, I'm allowed to say things like that. And then the third one was, you had to use voting machines because nobody could hand count things when they were so complicated, like ranked choice voting, which I think you still can hand count if you really, really wanted to. But dark money is is being adjudicated. Okay, we have the voting machines that we're going to be using. God bless our souls. And ranked choice voting is in place. How can you split a one-package, 3-part deal and allow one part of it to be adjudicated and allow the other 2 parts to go through? To me, that is totally illegal, and we should not be doing ranked choice voting, and we should not be using voting machines. Because the dark money part, if you look at all the ads and stuff coming from, being paid for by the Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, okay, who are using their Senate discretionary fund to fund things, we're using dark money all over the place for certain candidates, not all candidates.
Can I ask you to ask your question? Do
So
you
the
have a
question is, how can that happen?
Well,
Is it
so,
legal?
I mean, it is illegal. So in 2004, the last constitutional amendment that passed was regarding ballot initiatives. And a ballot initiative is supposed to have a single subject. It's supposed to be about one thing so that you can't get this kind of omnibus sham fest past the people on a vote. And yet, ballot measure 2 was on multiple things. And this is what is so frustrating by our Alaska Supreme Court. And I talked at length about the abuses, the judicial abuses. But basically, as it currently stands, our Supreme Court is radicalized. They are ideologues, they are left ideologues, and they say the Constitution doesn't mean what the Constitution means, it means whatever the hell we want it to mean. That's what they say. And if there is something that is obviously unconstitutional, it doesn't matter, because we have people in there that they consider the Constitution to be a living document, interpretable only by themselves. And it's absurd. So in Best versus Ulmer, this was back in, I think, 2001, this is one of the things Kathy Giesel was excoriated for in this short Q&A at the end of my debate. They talked about how, so one of the tools that the Supreme Court has used in its many abuses is to, anytime there's an amendment that they just flatly don't like, they can just go, we're going to say that's a revision, and you can only do revisions at a constitutional convention. Now, the definition of a revision is something that addresses 2 or more things. The beginning of the one-sentence revision in Best versus Ulmer out of a 12,000-word Constitution, the beginning was concerning the rights of prisoners, and then it was one sentence about what prisoners should be entitled to as their rights while incarcerated. And they said, no, we're going to call that a revision. That's not an amendment, that's a revision. Even though it was only about one thing, and it was one sentence in a 12,000-word Constitution. Our Supreme Court is, well, it's the natural byproduct of being unaccountable for 70 years. That's what has happened. And so to answer your question, ballot measure 2 should never have passed. It should never even been allowed to be presented. And its constitutional challenges that you take before this radicalized Supreme Court should have been victorious. They don't say how you elect the legislature or Senate and House candidates in the Alaskan Constitution, but they clearly spell out the mechanism for electing our governor. Clearly, they are clear about it. And ballot measure 2 was able to supersede that constitutional thing without actually technically being an amendment of that constitutional process. Everything about ballot measure 2 is dirty. The fact that the challenges failed is dirty, and the fact that it made it on the ballot when it had 3 parts to it, and you're only allowed 1 on a ballot measure, is also dirty. And all it is proof and more evidence that our Supreme Court has got to be changed to be accountable to we the people, because they are not right now. And I'm sorry, I am embarrassed to say that not a single one has been proposed for impeachment. Every senator, in my opinion, every conservative senator, even if you know it's going to fail, introduce articles of impeachment.
Yes.
Do it. Even if you know it's going to fail, it sends a message, enough is enough, enough is enough. You cannot act with impunity. And even though it's going to fail, it's going to be in the news. It's going to be in the news. Wow, it's up for impeachment. Man, they almost got that passed. They almost got that guy kicked out. But they won't do it. And I don't know why, but they won't do it. So we the people at a constitutional convention need to revise the mechanism of selection. And I think it will pass if we can get a convention called. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
Okay.
I thought I understood the process for the Constitutional Convention, how the delegates will be selected, but you told me just a few minutes ago something that I did not hear. So how are the delegates selected?
So, in our Constitution, it allows the legislature to set the criteria for delegates. And that has not been defined. Their job is to come up with those criteria after a convention is called. So when a convention is called, it begins a multi-year process. Here's how it would likely go. Pray to God that on November 8th, enough people get off their duffs and turn off their Netflix and forget about their grocery bills or their grocery runs or whatever they got going in their life, because this is important. And if I could plead with each one of you, talk to every waiter, everybody you interact with that you don't know it from Adam, talk to them and say, hey, where do you stand on the Constitutional Convention? Let me tell you why I want you to vote yes. Doesn't matter if you're a politician, doesn't matter, but you have to talk to people or this will not work. So the way it works, we call a convention. Then the legislature in the next session, which will be this spring, the legislature will set the criteria for what a candidate is. Now, I personally think, and it is up to the legislature, which is, that was an oversight of our founders, but the legislature can say, okay, you can't be a politician that's in office right now and also claim to be fixing the mess that you basically got us all in. So you can't be a politician. You shouldn't be an attorney. We're going to hire attorneys at the convention to provide recommendations, but you yourself shouldn't be an attorney because you have a dedicated conflict of interest being on the bar and being loyal to the Judicial Council. So you can't be an attorney, and you should be an Alaskan for X number of years. Excuse me. I think 5 at a minimum. I would love to see 10. I'd love, since the last Constitutional Convention call, you've seen this state for a decade, and you've seen what's happened and how it's happened if you follow it at all. I would think 10 would be a good, but the legislature gets to set that criteria. And then, part of that criteria can actually be the selection process, and there is a vehicle to do it via town hall precinct style, or do it by campaigning and electioneering and actually doing it. They get to pick that. But they don't get to pick the delegates. We, the people, get to elect the delegates. So they're, by whatever process, either a town hall sort of outcry and the crowd gathers around whoever is able to carry a message the best, or if it's an election with standard, check this for this person. The legislature gets to determine that, and then the people get to vote. Then the vote of the people won't happen for 2 years. So at the next election, we'll probably get a vote on delegates. After that, sometime between that and the following regular vote, a convention will happen. And out of that convention, there will be, I mean, the discussions in the state, if we could just get it passed, just get the convention call passed. The discussions in this state will be so robust and so good for us to unpack the things that are going wrong. I think a lot of people will learn just how corrupt things have become in that discussion process between electing delegates and actually holding the convention, and then voting whether to ratify the recommendations of the convention. And I think it'll be super healthy for our state collective kind of zeitgeist to understand why this may be a concern or not, and why it isn't. So you basically have at least a 4-year process until we would be potentially voting on changes. Does that kind of answer your question about that the order of operations?
The legislature can decide the criteria for delegates.
Yes.
That's scary.
Again, Shelley.
Well, first, Jake, I want to thank you for your convictions and your dedication. And you're a very good communicator. You've been blessed with that gift, and I really appreciate it. There are a lot of things I would like to say. You did an excellent job, but I want to just tag a couple things I think that really drive home. It's a little bit technical, but think about it. Since our nation's founding, there have been more than 230 state constitutional conventions held in our country. New Hampshire has had alone 16. In an 18-year period between 1968 and 1986, there were 19 state constitutional conventions held. And when they say, oh, there's polarization right now, people are too emotional, I think that's one of Kathy Giesel's arguments. What was happening between 1968 and 1986? Civil rights movement, Martin Luther King was assassinated, the women's liberation movement, an oil crisis, the Iran hostage situation. It was an extreme time, and yet those 19 states had state constitutional conventions, and you know what? The sky did not fall in a single one of them. They passed reasonable things. So it's really important for us to be communicating and talking to our friends. But my question, I had to make that point, which really doesn't have anything to do with my question, but I just wanted to drive home how reasonable this is. I am looking, because I know there was a poll that had me really worried a few weeks ago, that 46% of Alaskans were no and only 30% were yes, and then the remainder were undecided. So we have work to do, right? I am, and some of you have heard this ad nauseum, I think that one of the ways that we can win this is if we get the churches out to vote. So I want to know if you have a plan for that. And I tell you, I'm on the front lines right now of the cultural battle, and I tell you, if we don't change the judicial selection in this state, the judges are going to decide that it's okay for a little boy to be in your granddaughter's bathroom. They will decide that. And you know what's also happening? The new crop of the left, they're getting more and more extreme. It used to be the Democrats would vote to support opening up Anwar and things like that in the state. They're being less and less that way. So your judges are going to become more extreme green-leaning, and that's going to shut down job opportunities. Without a state spending cap, you will be taxed. So there are so many reasons, but the judicial thing to me, is pivotal. People need to understand, and I think the church needs to understand, as far as, if we are going to take back our schools, if we're going to preserve the family unit, which is the foundation of who we are as Americans, we have to have better judges. And I'll just make a point too, it was very corrupt, and they were actually warned at the Constitutional Convention. It wasn't a good idea. But at that time, the political leanings of attorneys in 1955, about half were on the left and half were on the right. Actually, a little more considered themselves right of center. What do you think? How do you think attorneys lean now? I don't know, but I'm guessing it's 90% to the left, 10% to the right, so it doesn't work. It kind of worked initially, but it does not work now. But anyways, how can we get the churches? I feel like we need a really specific plan. I remember back in the day volunteering on the Sunday before church, before elections, and putting papers in windshields at the different churches with a group. I think we need to do something like that. to make sure this passes. If we were to able to get just the churches in the valley out and a few key churches in Anchorage and Kenai, I think we could win this thing. I think we could go from that 30% way up over the 50%.
Thank you, Shelley. So the easiest way, I think, for churches to do that would be to play almost every church has an AV team now. They have a media department, and you put the lyrics of the song you're singing up on the screen. Almost every one of them has something like that and has the ability to play a video. Many churches play a video before every single sermon. But we produced a video it's got a whole bunch of people with recognizable faces if you're in the MatSu at least. My mug is on it, but I couldn't find anybody else to do it. So, but if you could play that 4-minute video, or if you could get your church elders to agree to play that 4-minute video, there are certain things, and actually this could turn into a long conversation, but churches are afraid to get political. They're afraid of that. And it's interesting is there's a group out there, I think it's up to like over 1,000 churches now, who are like daring the IRS to take away their it's the Church Hour for Liberty. Does anybody know what the name of that organization is? I talked to a gentleman. Anyway, it's a growing group of churches who are flaunting the IRS. Now, we're going to say vote for this guy. Vote for this guy. He's pro-life. Vote for Mike Shower. He's the only pro-life candidate running in his race. They're willing to say that from the pulpit, but then there are many churches who are terrified. They're like, well, we don't want to wade into politics. It might alienate our members. And that is precisely how we have gotten in this position. We're not going to talk about politics or religion. Rubbish. Talk about it. Talk about it. The reason your kids are gone astray is because you don't want to talk about religion. You don't want to talk about God. You also don't want to talk about politics because those are hot button issues and get people into arguments. Good. Good. Learning how to disagree and still be cordial is an important part of a liberal society. And anybody that, I'm a big believer in the liberal arts. Rhetoric, grammar, and logic. Are you kidding me? You think those things are being taught in liberal arts colleges now? No. They go in and they pull out a brush and they just start scrubbing brains. That's all they do. And you come out and you have one specific ideology and one specific agenda and you're activated and you have not learned the ability to think. But learning to disagree politely with somebody and make your point and try and find common ground, that is a skill. And it starts by actually opening your mouth and having those conversations, and it should make you a little uncomfortable. But in our churches, they actually have the ability, without fear, to take a stance on a ballot measure. All of those rules for churches only apply to candidates. Every church in the entire state could stay from the pulpit without any fear whatsoever. Here is why you should vote for a constitutional convention. It is a chance for God to do something mighty in this state when it is mighty needed. Without fear. Ballot initiatives have different rules than candidates. And ballot initiatives are wide open. So honestly, Shelley, it would be great if all of the churches of the Valley could just play that video. You don't even have to say anything. Just throw that up on the screen you already have with the AV system you already have. It is very succinct. It explains the position that we are in as Alaskans, and it tells people not to have a spirit of fear. So that's what I think they could do.
Hi. I know all of us share a concern about our election system. And of course, in Assembly, we've got it where we've got rid of Dominion. So I'm really excited about that. My husband and I, because we wanted to learn more, we decided to become election officials to learn the process more. Now, I remember, I'm not as worried about the Valley, but I remember reading with the mayor how they blocked, all these questionable ballots that, was not the proper chain of command, and I learned about the proper chain of command and how it works.
Chain of custody.
Chain of custody, I'm sorry. I'm military, so it's natural. I'm a Marine though. So.
Nobody's perfect. Those are Navy Marine jokes. We are Marines. It's okay.
My jokes are a little too dirty from remembrance. Okay, so how did that take place, and how can we all get involved in at least stopping that? There are so many things that need to be fixed. The voter rolls need to be cleaned up. I learned that specifically. A lot of people voting in different areas, have their names still on the ballot, or, on the roster. And of course, they can just show a non-picture ID as long as they have their voter card, etc. How can we at least protect multiple ballots just showing up in different areas? How can we get something organized like that? Is that I didn't know how to phrase that question, but.
So that's a complicated question. You're saying, how can we secure this coming election?
At least
I don't know that we can, so we have to vote more than they are cheating. That's it. That's the bottom line. There's going to be some level. I can't accurately put a percentage on it, but dead people are going to vote. People who haven't been in this state for 15 years are going to get mailed a ballot down because it was their following address. They're going to vote. They're going to laugh and drop that ballot in the mail. And who knows what other levels of nefarious action are going to happen. But the only way is if we turn out more than they can possibly cheat. That's the only way in this election. Now, if we can get a convention passed, we can set rules in place.
Right.
But as we're kind of hamstrung right now. We a little bit are, and we've got in this position through voter apathy and voter ignorance. And so the only way to do it is to talk to your neighbor. Talk to people that you wouldn't normally talk to about politics. Bring it up. That's the only way at this current stage that we can secure our election, besides doing what you and your husband, and I applaud you for doing, getting activated with securing what you can in your area. And that's awesome and noble.
Ma'am, what group was it? Who was it that actually went and stood watch at polling places?
I don't remember their name in Anchorage, but Joel Davidson, our editor-in-chief at the Watchman, he went and interviewed them, and they were just cheerful. They had thermoses of coffee, and they're like, "Yep, we're standing here all night. That's right, I'm gonna camp out right here. I got my hand warmers, got my hot coffee, got my parka, and we're just gonna sit here. We're just gonna make sure there's no shenanigans." And guess what? They elected Mayor Bronson. So and here, boy, that guy willing to fight politely, with courtesy, but just willing to say the truth and fight. He's a fighter, and God bless him for that.
That's why he's getting something organized for
Yeah.
people. We go to polling places, and especially in places like Anchorage, or activate people in Juneau, etc.
Well, I'm not going to volunteer you, but that would be a wonderful group to start on Facebook and start soliciting now. Hey, we need people willing to show up to these locations. We have a giant list. If you can't do anything, do this, and you watch that'll catch fire. At least out here in MatSu. Yes, sir.
So on, like you said, you bring up their number one crazy is risk. The risk, we need to really make sure this gets out hard every time, everything we do. The risk is not there because we have 3 votes. We had the vote this November 8th to do a constitutional convention or not. If we decide to do a constitutional amendment, the delegates are voted by we, the people. Now, I've had people go, "Oh my God, we could get a bunch of liberals in there." And I'm going, wait a minute, look at the structure of our state legislature right now. We actually have the majority. There are more majority conservatives and some rhinos that have switched over to the dark side. But by and large, and I'm looking at this coming election, I'm hearing 25 to 27 in the state house, which would be a supermajority. Senate, God only knows what's going to happen there. But we could, just looking at the house aspect, if we could send 40 to 80 delegates that would be non-politicians, agreed. And in America, I would suggest that the state legislature, when they set this thing up, that the convention is held in January in Fairbanks in minus 40-degree weather. So
I've heard this before.
yeah, so we need to do that. And then the fact is that, like you said, once we pick the delegates and the delegates go and they come out with what the recommendations are, is that the delegates, because of the plenary powers, could turn out and say, each one of these constitutional amendments is an individual yes or no, 51%. Now, what I would ask the state legislature, what I would hope the legislature do, because this whole deal, this is going to take multi-years, and it's gonna cost $17 million. Well, if I want to be running as a delegate, and I'm running as a delegate, I want you all as my staff. I'll pay you $1,000 a day, no problem. That's just plain stupid. But what I would like to see, instead of this being a multi-year, if the state legislature, especially if we can send them as good solid conservatives in the House and the Senate, can get this thing done and come up with a means for doing the delegates, then we do it a special election in November of 2023. Then that way, they could say, okay, you're going to wherever on the road system to have a constitutional convention in January of 24 for no more than 90 days or no more than 75 days. They have the ability to do that. And that's how we get this bad boy passed. Because it's we the people vote on it first, we the people vote on the delegates, and we the people vote on the final outcome.
Mike, do you have a question?
So the question is, how do we get to the point where we don't have to do a multi-year process which falls into the hands of the socialists?
Okay, well, there's no getting around it's going to take a couple of years to get something like this done. I mean, there's no way to accelerate it, and honestly, I don't know that you actually would, if you really thought about it, I don't know that you would want it accelerated, because accelerating it will truncate our ability to flesh out these ideas. And once we say, okay, we're fed up enough, how are the people? Let's fix some things. Once we say that, they're going to be reeling. The people who claim to be conservative and we're on the no crowd are going to go, okay, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, we're doing it now, so we're going to try and make sure we do it well. And then you have the no people that we're doing it because they love the status quo and they're going to lose their minds. Let's go ahead and set your hair on fire. I don't know. So I don't think there's a way to truncate it into a multi-year thing. But it's easy to get focused on, well, then what happens? Well, then what happens? Well, then what happens? Right now, the battlefront we are all on has a singular objective, and that is a yes vote on one in November. Focus not on what happens after that. Worry about this battle, because if we're focused on that, there's a very good chance that we won't win in November, and then none of that will matter. Virtually all of our political energy dedicated to this particular thing, not a candidate, but to this particular issue, has to be on getting people to have enough faith in their fellow Alaskans to vote yes on November 8th on ballot measure 1. And the way, honestly, if you could help us, and I didn't get into this, but I should have. So the no crowd, let me back all the way up. One of the most evil men in the world is George Soros.
Yes.
He literally funds, at $20 an hour, these rioters in the Black Lives Matter, they're throwing Molotov cocktails, they're making $20 an hour to go and stir up trouble. This guy is a devil. He's a devil. George Soros was the single largest contributor to the Arabella Advisors. Him and a couple other nefarious tycoons. Arabella Advisors started the 1630 project. The 1613. No, it is 1630. Yeah. No, 1630. It's the 1630 one. They write it out. 16 in white and 30 in red. So it's this. He started the 1630 fund, who then funneled some more of his money through this nonprofit racket to the no crowd. $500,000 basically flowed from George Soros all the way through to the airwaves in Alaska and social media and polls and everything else. Here's what's interesting. When we did ballot measure 2 and we said, no, get dark money out of politics, right? We filed a complaint to APOC and said, the statute is crystal clear. You cannot stop on your paid for by with an organizational name and let people hide behind an organization nobody knows. You think people don't know about a constitutional convention? Ask the typical person, have you ever heard of the 1630 fund? Yeah. Crickets, guaranteed. Nobody has heard of them. So, but who they are funded by is George Soros through Arabella Advisors. If you were a candidate, you would have to dig all the way down through to the single largest donor of the root organization, a person. Guess what you don't have to do on ballot initiatives? Everything stays the same. You can just say, top 3 contributors, blah, blah, blah. That's it. And we filed a complaint with APOC that they were hiding who the 1630 fund really is. And APOC said, yeah, we looked at it and it doesn't matter for ballot measures. It's like, oh, you dirty rats. Here's the other interesting tie that you may not know. So the same Arabella Advisors, founded by Soros, and I forget that other dude's name. He's got a real hard, Gates, but there's this guy in Europe. He's got a really hard name to pronounce.
doesn't matter. So the Airmail Advisors also started the state's newsroom. Guess what the Alaska affiliate for the state's newsroom is? The Alaska Beacon. The brand new Alaska Beacon, started by the same money that funneled $500,000 to the No crowd, all flowing back to Soros and a couple very wealthy billionaires trying to stir up trouble and burn this entire democratic experiment to the ground. It drives me insane. But so what I wanted to say, because of that, we have raised so far from individual people, our yes vote crowd has raised about 30 grand, which is I'll be honest, it's not a lot. But it is a lot of people throwing in $50 and $100 and saying, you know what, somebody's got to do it. We are the very definition of grassroots. And so here's what I would ask you. ConventionYes.com is our website, and it has the planks of why you're absolutely right. It's not a risk. There's 3 times the people of Alaska have their say. Once to do it, once to pick who gets to be on the think tank, and once to say whether what they came out with makes sense. We get to vote 3 times on this throughout this process. And so to be afraid of that, you got a bias if you're afraid of that. But we are starved for money to get this message out there. I'm doing my best to make the messaging and help craft the messaging. I built the website, I produced the video, and I did it all gratis. But as far as getting it out there, that costs money. And I mean, I don't know if you know, but they, so when you're in radio or television, you have this thing called LUR, which is lowest unit rate. So if you're selling ads for, a good old boy deal for an annual contract and you're selling them for $10, and a candidate comes along and says, I need to buy ads, by law, you have to offer them your lowest unit rate for that similar ad campaign. Ballot initiatives, not the same. A ballot initiative, they can go, yeah, we're selling issue ads for $250. That's what radio ads are. $250 an ad, 30 seconds, gone. It is very expensive to wage this war and also have such paltry means. So if you can give, every dime of what you give will be used to reach out to Alaska. Nobody is making any money on this deal. We are just trying to see the people of Alaska get educated enough to have the courage to vote yes. That's what we're trying to do. So if you can donate, please donate at Convention Yes. There's a big orange button, donate, and whatever you can give us helps. It really legitimately helps. It helps us buy flyers, it helps us buy signs. Our donor list right now is about 40 people, and the biggest giver is Tom Grissom here in the Valley. He owns Algon. He's a spine surgeon. Tom Grissom gave us 10 grand. Jesse Sumner, bless his heart, he gave us 5 grand, and then a guy at Anchorage named John Fleming is our 3rd largest donor at 2,500. Other than that, everybody is a couple $100 or $50 or $20. We need everybody to chip in so we can get this message out there. They're on every break. On all radio stations, you'll hear that. Oh, the Constitution's open up, and on the ballot, or on the docket for changes or access to state lands, your privacy rights, your hunting rights, and it's just boogeyman, and people are buying it. It's very frustrating. Anyway, I'll stop laughing.
Okay, but I'm going to add also the 1619 project, or whichever, 1630. Also, the 2nd is NEA Alaska PAC. And the 3rd is IBEW. So just take those 3 big supporters of the no.
NEA out of Juneau and IBEW out of DC.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna have to cut it short, but you have a question?
No, I don't want to get
Okay, because we have a lot of people here who'd like to give a minute to talk. Yep.
Yeah, the question of QR codes.
QR codes?
So let me just mention this here.
What's that?
So do you have QR codes that it's going to be posted on signs or such? And I experienced this in my campaign where I was actually driving by and holding my phone, and it picked it up while I'm driving, not looking at the...
While you were driving?
Well, yeah, I was holding it up. I was going like this in the driving.
Some will say reckless. I'll say talented.
Yeah. Right out, everybody.
So the point is, it picked it up and I was able to look at the website, and you've got great videos. So can we get a bunch of these so that they're out there and plasmable all over the community?
Please take one. I have 5 here. There are also yard signs in the back. If your house, you're blessed with property that's beautiful and private,
please don't put a yard sign up at your house for the 6 guests you're gonna have between now and November 8th. But if you're on a corner with some decent traffic nearby, or your business is, please do take a yard sign and an H stake and stick it out there, if you would.
Okay, so we're gonna have, okay, Joel?
One quick question on the vote. A constitutional amendment we have to pass with the 2/3 majority at the ballot box. Is that not the case?
No. Constitutional amendments have a 2/3 majority in this House and Senate. At the ballot box, it's a simple majority, 51.
Thanks, Joel, that was a good question. Okay, so we're gonna move on with we have this room till noon, so I thought I'd better wrap it up here or give some other people a chance. Thank you. Can everybody give Jake a hand? Excellent. And tell us the website one more time.
ConventionYes.com.
ConventionYes.com. Write it down. ConventionYes.com. Okay, so we do have a few local candidates or legislators here today, and so I'd like to give them just really, I'm going to say, like, try to keep it short, please. 2 to 3 minutes to maybe give us an update or talk about your re-election campaign, those kinds of things. Can I start with you, Ken?
Sure.
This is Ken Mccarty.
Hi. Well, I'm Ken Mccarty from Eagle River to Yak, the other part of the valley, beyond that. So I am the only Republican conservative candidate for Senate. So the other person is Kelly Merrick. The 2 people that were on of the 4, they dropped out and they're supporting my race. So tell your friends about that. She told me just a couple of days ago, I've got more money than you, might as well just drop out. And I would like to say to her, because I've been to 1,700 homes knocking on doors, my intention is to go to 2,000 more homes, and I would say I have more votes than you, so what is it? But I still need more money to take care of the last bit of that, and so that whole deal there. I really encourage you to let your friends know, and that piece I think that Shelley brought up of just letting the churches know of we've got to take a stance, and if we don't take a stance, then it's our demise. And my favorite person in the Bible is Mordecai. What an amazing person, and Esther was an amazing person, but it was Mordecai, and here we are in a situation like that where we're going, my gosh, what's going to go down as the people of Israel had the edict that they're going to be slaughtered, and yet God had a bigger plan. Right? So I'm Ken Mccarty, and I'm running for Senate to be that conservative voice in the Senate with Shelley and others. Website is McCartyForAlaska.com.
Okay, who do we have here too? We have David Eastman. You need a couple minutes?
Sure. Thank you very much. You know, I am thinking back as I'm listening to everything Jake's been saying, where are we in history? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that question, but...
Oh, try the other microphone, sorry.
How is this? Okay, I can hear. Wonderful. You know, we have for centuries in this country had a bulwark to protect liberty, and that was in the form of a constitution, and that was in the form of elections that protect that constitution. And that has been, if you go back to World War II, that has been our management override. Very well defended. You have the opportunity for the people as voters to put a stop to nonsense. You know, back in 1798, they came out with, you know, they were afraid of a war with France, and they had the Alien and Sedition Acts. And suddenly, newspaper, you know, were being shut down because they were not pro-government. And then in the election that followed, 1800, Thomas Jefferson was elected president. All of those laws, for the most part, all went away. And suddenly, you again have a free press, and you can criticize the government and those types of things. Voters were able to do that because we have election processes able to do that. What we have right now in this country, and you've seen for the last 4 years, is a rejection of elections, a rejection by one party in this country that elections, you know, should decide the course of the future of the country. And you can see that each of the times that Democrats in Congress tried to impeach the president, they didn't just say we want to keep him out of office. They always made sure at the very end to say, and you can never run for office again. A complete rejection of elections, of the ability to run against an opponent that you don't like. No, that's not part of their game plan anymore. And you can see that particularly in my race. We talked about the cost of elections. Usually, house races are about $20,000, $30,000. Sometimes, if it's particularly close, mixed district, it might be a lot more than that. Anchorage, some districts are like that. But they've decided that in my race, they're going to fight it out in the courts. There was an idea, I won't say whether it's true or not, but the Democrats came up with an idea that there wasn't going to be an easy way to beat me in an election, and so they want to now take me to court and make me fight them in the courts against a former Mark Pickett staffer from Anchorage, against an attorney who works in Anchorage, against a judge who's from Anchorage. And then they want to have a voice and a vote in what the voters in my district can vote on, whether or not I can even be on the ballot. And so, if you think back to that Maginot Line where it was well defended, the Germans could never come across into France, they just went around. And now they are trying to go around elections in this state. And they have asked the judge right now is so far inclined, since he agrees, the state needs to vet candidates before they can be candidates. The state needs to assess whether or not a candidate is particularly pro-government enough, pro-loyal to the Constitution enough. And they've created, just like in Texas, where they had a law passed where individuals can now sue abortion providers if they're violating abortion laws in Texas. Well, now out of thin air, this judge has decided that each of us, in fact everyone in Alaska, has the ability to, out of thin air, have a right to sue any candidate for office, anyone who's elected in office, drag them into court and make them defend themselves about why they should be allowed to run for office. Otherwise, the people in their district cannot vote for them. So that's why, in my case, now instead of it being a $30,000 race, it's probably a $130,000 race, because not only do I have to campaign, but now I also have to hire attorneys, fight their experts in court, find my own experts from out of state to come in and testify, and all those things. So that's what's going on in my district. Yes, I wish I was able to knock on a whole lot more doors, but right now, we're knocking on the doors of the courthouse instead. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelley?
Sorry, I just want to say, help Ken out. We need him. And we've talked about this before. We can have a sham of a Republican majority, or you can have a real Republican majority. He's one of the 5 that we need in order to have a real Republican majority. I also want to mention to you, after the election, sometime in November, thanks to the Deputy Mayor here, Pam Moline, we've become aware of a backdoor approach to get to our kids with the critical race theory stuff, what they are now calling diversity, equity, inclusion. And so we're going to have a public meeting to give them a chance why MatSu is doing that. They're supposed to be looking after the health and well-being of our children, and I'm scratching my head how on earth is promoting that going to help our kids. So that'll be coming, and we hope to have a really good turnout for that. So stay tuned. Main thing right now is, dig a little deep into your pocketbooks. I just sat there on my phone, donated to convention. Yes, need to look at the candidates that need it. Ken is one. I'll name the 5: Mia Costello, Ken McCarty, Mike Shower, Jim Matherly, and who's the other one? Roger Holland. Those are the 5 that need help. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. And we do have give her a hand. Nice. Always good information. Thank you. And we have Deputy Mayor Pam Moline from Palmer. I'd like her to give a quick little update too.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Just real quickly, we have managed to retain our conservative council. That's good. Turnout was abysmal in Palmer. Unfortunately, But there are things that we're looking at to create a little bit more activity for turnout for the elections. I mean, unfortunately, unfortunately, a lot of that is due to, I believe, the city of Palmer, really. I mean, there was no effective advertising, there was no campaigning with the council members that really created some buzz. So we've got a lot of work to do, and so that's basically our update. The good news is that we have retained our conservative council, and we're looking forward to getting a lot of work done in Palmer this year. So.
I want to thank,
Dana's over there.
Yeah, but here's what I was just gonna say. We have, I know in the room right now, at least 3 people who are running for office who are not registered Republicans. So according to our bylaws, we're not allowed to let those people speak at our meetings. But I do want to thank those people for attending our meeting because they're friendly faces and we all have great information to share. So we appreciate that. But I'd like to move on now to John has a really important message for everyone, and you may have seen the cards on the table.
Thank you. Yeah, on your table, there's these voter guides. These voter guides aren't for you. They're for you to help. Because we know already who you guys are going to vote for. But there's a lot of people out there that don't even know who their school board person is, or their assembly person, or even what district they're in. So take some of these, take a picture of these with your phone, and send them to everybody on your list. That would be the good way, because the name of the game right now is getting the word out. And people don't have a clue of who to vote for or what. You know, you guys are pretty in tune with all that, but there's a lot of people that aren't. So take these, if you go door to door, if you're a candidate and you're going door to door, campaigning, take a bunch of these. I got more in the car. And pass them out as you go along, So that's one announcement. The other one is we're having a special sale right now on campaign signs. So grab one, take them with you. They're at the low price of free. But they are effective, especially if someone sees them in your neighborhood and they go, I know that guy's really politically astute. I'm gonna, he knows who to vote for. So if he's supporting this guy, so will I. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, before I go to my messages, is there anyone else? Jean, would you like to speak for a second?
Sure you would.
Okay, this is Jean Holt. She has some relevant information today, too.
I'm just the individual going around neighborhoods trying to promote convention, yes.
Can you put it closer? Just put it closer.
Hello.
Yeah, you have to put it
Anyway, my name's Jean Holt, and I'm doing the Constitution Convention Yes campaign, just going around by myself to different neighborhoods and also campaigning for candidates, endorsing them. But it sure would be nice if people would get involved in this convention, yes. I have some flyers here, if you could make, I have also a copy that you can make on white paper, and we really need to get the word out. Nobody's even aware of this, so if I could give some way, I'd appreciate it. And if you'd like to get involved, it's a one-man show.
Yeah. Jean, amazing. You have a message?
Got some negatives and some positives. I'm formerly now the president of MatSu chapter of AMAC Action. I got fired by AMAC Action in Florida. We're standing up for ballot measure 1. So, next Saturday, the 15th of October, at Real Life Church at 11 a.m., we're having our potentially last MatSu chapter AMAC meeting. We're going to be discussing all the things that's happened and determine if we want to maintain that chapter or change to another organization, which I'm either going to call the Conservative Seniors of Alaska, CSA, which has interesting connotations if you think about the Confederate States of America, or calling it the Concerned Alaska Seniors. Probably the latter is the best. But that's what we're going to be talking about. I need as many AMAC members to show up. We got 350 in our chapter. We need as many people because we got over $1,000 of your money, that's been donated to us, and we need to figure out what we're going to do. So 11 a.m. next Saturday, real life church. I need as many people to get there and fill that place up. Thank you.
Okay, so another action item for you is our own Sandy May is organizing some sign waving for our candidates, and we have two places, and we'll be putting out emails to our membership too every time. But Wednesday, October 12th, that's this coming Wednesday, October 12th, 4:30 to 6:30. We'll have two different groups, one at KGB in Clap and one at Parks and Pittman. So right there below the Three Bears at Parks and Pittman. So if you're closer out in that area, join us from 4:30 to 6:30 on Wednesday. We'll be waving signs for our endorsed candidates, Nick Begich, Kelly Shabaka, and the Parks and Pittman area, and both the KGB area are Mike Schauer and Kevin McCabe heading out that direction. You may notice Jacob Butcher also, who's the school board candidate for that area out of KGB also. So, and myself, I'm KGB in Fairview. So anyway, so I wanted to get that out to you, and this is our last meeting before the election. So again, I just need to say, please rank the red. That is the big push. It's the only way we're going to get conservative people elected is ranking the red. And so I think if you all tell everybody you know and put your signs in your yard and all of that. So before we go, is there any other member comments? Just member comments. Everybody got a chance to speak if wants to. Okay, I'm going to draw for our new member scholarship today by Pat McCullum. Yay. Sometimes people don't know that men can be members.
Would be the name.
Yeah.
Join fellow Alaskans for being here today. Please like and share this video. Don't forget to go to website politadick.com and click that donate button. All support goes right back into doing what we do here. Appreciate it. Please help us out. Well, your support is what made today's broadcast possible, and the equipment that we use to make that happen, and the cash money that got us here to be able to do it. So thank you once again for all being here today. It's greatly appreciated. I am just kind of swinging away from what they're doing here right now while they are calling out the numbers for this is the Constitutional Convention, why we should vote yes. It was what was being discussed here today. Trying to push past the fear-mongering.
There you go. If you'd like a Nick Begich cap, really nice red or blue back there, stop on back at the back table before you leave. Anything else out of the order?
The Constitutional Convention.
Yes, please.
Please like and share this video. Great.
I had my cell phone off during this meeting, and apparently an article literally just dropped. The NEA out of Washington, D.C. has now thrown $500,000 aside. 1630 Project jumped their donations from $500,000 to $1.5 million. They threw a whole nother $1 million at this project. Any donation you have, it will be much appreciated. But we're up $2.25 million to $30,000.
Oh, jeez. Wow. That would be exciting if we could do on that. Yeah. Okay, I guess we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting.
All right, thank you all for being here today. Again, this was why we should be voting yes for the Constitutional Convention. You may or may not have heard that last announcement. It seems that the Vote No group, the 1630 group, NEA of out-of-state NEA, both have combined another $1.5 million into the Vote No campaign against the $30,000 that are 100% grassroots Alaskan created to vote yes for the Constitutional Convention. The swamp out there is desperate. They want Alaskans to not take control of government. They don't want us to have a say on what happens within our state. They want the judges to decide for them. They want to spend our money. They don't want the everyday Alaskan to have any more voice within our government, and that's very clear for everyone to see. Take a moment, like and share this video. If you're on YouTube right now, subscribe and make sure you hit that notification so that you get notified when we go live. If you're on Twitter, like us on Twitter, follow us. We only live stream to Twitter. We're not one of those Twitter people that sits there and comments on every little thing. If we're doing anything on Twitter, it's a stream. That's pretty much it. YouTube, same thing. We are streaming stuff that all Alaskans need to be seeing and hearing, and that's why it's on YouTube. That's why I make the effort and why I'm paying thousands of dollars a year to be able to bring this to you and make this possible. And it's your support and your donations that have made this happen. So go to our website, Politadick.com, and click that support button. Again, without your support, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't have this quality sound system and video equipment to be able to broadcast all this to you. Hopefully you can still hear me. Again, you guys all have a great day. I am going to be back a little bit later on today with Dana, who is running for Assembly District 2 out here in the MatSu Valley against the incumbent that is there in office, who currently works for the MatSu Moms for Social Justice group that proudly brought us the Black Lives Matter protests, the mask mandates, trying to get police chiefs fired, and the ones that were recalled this past year. She is a part of that group of all the ones that were recalled. We need to find people to replace her. If I was voting in that district, in that particular assembly seat, my vote would be going for either Megan Troop or Dana Redfridge, and I would be, either one of these two would have my vote right now, and that's guaranteed. You guys all have a great day, and I will see you here in a few